My name is Mr. Silas Hibbs.
Hi, I'm Kathy Drabkin.
I'm Emily Senzel, and I'm a junior here at Hayes High, and I'm the owner of Senzel Film, which is a photography business. I started Senzel Film in 2019. I was a 7th grader, and I started out by taking athletic images. That's not a usual starting point for most photographers. And then I started to expand my horizon by going into families, portraits, weddings, other things like that, and I've really fallen in love with it over the years, and it's kind of a dream that I never really had. I would have to say the one thing that I've struggled with the most is pricing. Photography is a very expensive investment, and on my end especially, gear is very expensive. A lot of people, when you are younger, don't think you have a ton of experience, even though I've been doing it for 4 years now. So finding the right price point is very hard for me, and getting people to pay it since I am younger is difficult, but that would be most difficult. Being a young entrepreneur is also difficult too, because you have to manage your school schedule with your work schedule. I'm basically my own boss, and yes, I have mentors who have helped me, but I've had to figure it out for myself along the way too. I would advise you, if you want to be a young entrepreneur, to always follow your dreams. I know that sounds so cliche and it's knocked into the ground all the time, but it gets hard sometimes, it really does, and being dedicated and persevering through those tough times is going to get you to where you want to be. It's a learning experience. Never give up, because you have more room to learn always.
Hi, I'm Kathy Drabkin. I run Kathy's Spreads, which is a micro bakery here in Hayes, Kansas. Well, I guess following the market, I realized there was a need, an opportunity, and it was something that I love to do. Based on that, I decided that's when I could become more than just a home baker, but actually provide a service to the community. I think there's several things. One is you really have to enjoy what you're doing, because it's one thing to make a cake and, spend a weekend making a cake. It's another when you have 20 cakes to make and you're grating lots and lots of lemon zest, or you're buttering, 20 pans. Things scale up fast, and then sometimes it's not as fun as you thought it was. So you have to really enjoy and sort of really appreciate the end product of what you're producing. I would say another thing is that you should be very serious about what you're doing. I'm a small bakery, and I have a lot of respect for people who do this every day. But just because I'm small doesn't mean I don't take what I do seriously. So I study, I research, I go to workshops to train with professional bakers so that I can really master my craft. And so I would say that that's very important for somebody starting out. I think scaling up is the hardest thing to deal with for me. Baking 1 loaf of bread, 2 loaves of bread, that's easy, but when you're generating 60 loaves of bread and a couple dozen croissants or whatever, it becomes a lot more tricky, and you have to figure out what size mixer do you need, and what kind of ovens do you need, and your workflow as far as when you're going to get things done, when, and then I think that another tricky thing is when to say no. So it's very easy to take on more work than you're really able to do well. And so at some point I said, okay, I'm not going to bake on Fridays for anything that requires me to get up before 4 a.m. And, setting some parameters. But I'm able to do that because I'm working, this is very much a hobby business. I'm not trying to make my living off of it. My business grew out of a love of baking here at home. I've always baked for family and friends, cookies, cakes, whatever, and got pretty good at it. Became the person who was invited to bring the bread or the desserts to pop-up dinners. And about 15 years ago, I started teaching classes through Hayes Rec for baking, and that was a really good experience because it forced me to become very rigorous and exacting in my methods and my recipes, and so that people could replicate what I had been able to do here in my home kitchen. Then about 10 years ago, the Downtown Hayes folks launched a new downtown market. And I was encouraged by friends to just throw my hat in the ring and see what happened. So I took my 30 little loaves of bread down to that first Saturday market, and they sold out immediately. And that happened every Saturday that summer. And so I got to the end of the summer. I had developed a customer base of folks who were saying, well, the market's ending, what's going to happen? So based on that interest, I developed the model of a micro bakery, which is what I consider Kathy Spreads. I bake once a week. Every Saturday morning I post a new menu of savory and sweet items on my website. People place their orders on Tuesdays, and then me and a half-time assistant work together on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and put together and bake on Friday. And then people come Friday afternoon to pick up their breads and sweets, and they're very happy. The most popular product, there are probably three. One is my orchard bread. It's a basic wheat, rye, white flour bread, but it has raisins and dried cranberries and dried apricots and pecans in it. People love it for their breakfast. I also make a French bread that's filled with smoked Gouda cheese and toasted walnuts that people really like. And my almond croissants are very popular. As far as what I like to bake most, that's a little tricky because it's sort of like choosing between my favorite children, but you know. I like to bake products that take thinking and research and have a variety of flavors and textures. So, like these croissants that I'm working on, they're called carrot cake twice-baked croissants. I was researching twice-baked croissants. I found this bakery in Australia that only bakes croissants, so I ordered their cookbook. I did a lot of research, did some tweaking, some experimenting, and then what I ended up with is a product that has carrots and walnuts and almonds and really crunchy, crispy texture, but then soft interior and cream cheese frosting, and so it's that kind of interesting eating experience that I enjoy most producing.
My name is Mr. Silas Hibbs. I teach entrepreneurship class, economics class, emerging technologies, as well as business essentials this year. First of all, entrepreneurship is a great way for students to kind of find their strengths and weaknesses and then look to see how they can apply their strengths in a way that adds value for society. So it's really geared toward the individual student in a very individualistic way to figure out, hey, this is something I'm pretty good at, this is something I enjoy doing. How could I make other people's lives better by way of using my skills in a beneficial way? Secondly, entrepreneurship class is a lot different than other classes at Hayes High because it actually encourages you to fail fast and hard. I think if you do a lot of research on different entrepreneurs, you realize that many of them have probably more failed ideas than they have successful ideas. And entrepreneurship class is a way for students to get experience failing in a very controlled environment, as well as maybe building up the confidence and grit in them to go take on new challenges. Entrepreneurship is very valuable to the community of Hayes because it creates value for the citizens of Hayes. And the second a business doesn't create value for its customers or its patrons is the second that it stops getting revenues and eventually will likely close. So the cool thing about entrepreneurship is if it's a successful business idea and customers value it more so than the cost they pay for it, it adds value to society by ways of not only businesses contributing back to the community, but also those businesses oftentimes tax, and it's tax revenue for the city as well. And that tax revenue goes to our schools, maybe our roads, and a variety of other local initiatives that make Hayes a really great place to live. The main takeaway would be this: I'm a believer that everyone kind of has their own unique calling in this life. And it's, like I said before, it's where maybe your head and your heart kind of overlap. It's not all just a logical decision, and it's all not just a heartfelt, just kind of whimsical decision. It's where your heart and your head align. And by doing so, I think the student can find their calling. And when you have your calling, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're going to work every day. It's actually a lot of fun, and you look forward to going to work. So I think entrepreneurship helps students have a lot of introspective looking at themselves to figure out what they enjoy, how they can help others, and they help hopefully realize that it's, business is a lot bigger than just making a lot of money. It's actually, how do you add value for society as a whole? And I think that's a big thing that I like my entrepreneurships to understand it. if anything, you've been entrusted with a lot of talents and treasures and time, and the question is, how can you use those to give back to your local community or your community long term? A lot of times in my entrepreneurship class, students are given the entire semester to formulate a business from scratch. And a lot of times at the beginning of that class, we look to kind of do a SWOT analysis of ourselves, which is an analyzation of our strengths, our weaknesses, the opportunities you have individually, and then threats to those opportunities, both of which are external. We start there kind of figuring out, okay, who am I and what do I find value in doing, which I think it's fair to know that as a high school kid, those are some deep questions. And then from there, you're kind of tasked with, how can I use these skills to monetize or to make other people's lives better, and in turn exchange time for maybe currency. And then what we do is we from the marketing, from the financials to the legal side, to the actual giving you time to go experiment with your business, you are able to devote the entire hour to go and maybe look to have your dream or your opportunity come to real life. What I've kind of noticed with a lot of students is when it gets to the actually doing it part, they have this great business plan and they want to do it, but many are scared to take the step forward to take that risk and actually do it because they're afraid of failure. And part of that's special about entrepreneurship classes, I'm going to give you the encouragement and that opportunity to chase after maybe something that you're really passionate about. And I'll be the first one to pick you up when you win or if you do fail. And I'll be one of the most loyal supporters to you long after this. Sounds silly, but just get out there and do it. Have the courage to be that fish that swims against the current and against where everyone else is going, and just give it a shot. Don't be surprised that whether you don't have success or whether you do have great success, society or people, there's always going to be naysayers and haters that maybe they're jealous they didn't have the idea first, or they didn't have the skill set or courage to go after their dreams, and so they want to kind of knock others down. So my advice would be, follow your gut's intuition and don't be afraid to pursue your passions regardless of what maybe some of your peers think. Find those 2 or 3 trusted mentors of yours that have maybe done what you're interested in doing before, and kind of use their wisdom and advice versus maybe some of your peers. And then finally, never be too proud or too large to ask for help. I think if you'd ask a lot of the great entrepreneurs of our day, they all had someone come, they didn't all do it themselves, and they always had someone probably look to help them in a way that they couldn't accomplish stuff by themselves. So never be too proud to think you can do it yourself.